no money,
All right.
no sex, no sex.
I love the dance music. It's amazing. I just met Bobby Evans. The ring on his finger. Oh my God! It's everybody should win a World Series. It's amazing. Um, I know we would all like to. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to have John Miller come on first, which I'll introduce in a second. We're going to chat for a bit. He's going to tell one of the best stories ever. We'll kind of round that out for 10, 15 minutes. Then bring Bobby on. We'll do a three-man weave. And I've prepared for this John Miller interview. I am actually wearing Willie McCovey socks for the occasion. And on that note, we will bring him out. One of the greatest announcers of all time. I know that this is Vin Scully's year, and Scully is awesome. And sure, Vin Scully's amazing. But I will tell you, the other night when Matt Moore was pitching a no-hitter, first of all, I jinxed it. Sorry about that. But I had a decision to make because the Giants were playing the Dodgers. And the way I have it set up with my Roku and all that stuff, so I actually was making a decision between watching Vin Scully on television, actually watching the game, and listening to the game with John Miller, and I chose John Miller. And I'm not being a homer, I did. That's what I actually did because it was a Giants game, and I love when the home announcer gets a chance to do it. And I put John up with anybody, including Vin. He is fantastic, and he's a wonderful human being. So John Miller, thank you so much, and come on up. Oh, I'm supposed to have backup. I guess I can. You know what? Why don't you you want to vamp for 30 seconds while I set this up? I forgot that I should have my redundancy of my podcast in case it goes bust. Introduce yourself. Who are you?
Oh, this is being recorded?
Yes, it's being recorded in many different avenues right now.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
You didn't tell me about that. By the way, great to see all of you here tonight. Baseball fans, this is becoming a baseball town and has been for many years. And that was an amazing night at Dodger Stadium because, and Bobby Evans will be up here, and we can all ask him ourselves, but a big reason that the Giants went after Matt Moore was the Dodgers. The Dodgers have not done well against left-handed pitching this year. So Matt Moore and Will Smith, the reliever, that was the time that they were brought in, and they both did extremely well. Will Smith had his two best games out of the bullpen in that series, and then Matt Moore almost made history. So anyway, it was just a treat to be there, and I've had the great thrill broadcasting Giants baseball. We get a no-hitter every year, it seems like. It's
Chris Heston.
They're not in that short
good.
supply, you know. So, yeah. But just one every year. So anyway, we're waiting for the one this year now still.
That's right. Maybe it'll be in the World Series.
Okay.
It's an even year. I don't know. I'm an optimist. Sure, why not? John, literally we were backstage, and like I said, the way we're going to set it up is we're going to chat for a bit, then we're going to bring Bobby in, so I thought it'd be good to riff on one story. And you said, oh, this is the story that I'm going to tell, and it's apropos with the Willie McCovey socks, and when you told it to me backstage, I said, what? That can't be true. So there's no question. You could just go ahead and tell the story, and people will be enthralled by this thing because it's amazing.
Well, we'll see if you're enthralled or not. But, now, the big thing, we just had the stats people out here, and teams are all in on the stats and whatnot. And so now we have all the shifting and the overshifting and whatnot. I mean, teams always adjusted. They played a guy to pull, things like that. And years ago, there were certain guys, Willie McCovey was one of them, where they might put three infielders to the right side and only leave one guy on the left side. And way back in the 40s, teams did that. And in fact, they did stuff even more dramatic for Ted Williams. But now it's very commonplace that, for instance, with the Giants, every time Brandon Belt comes up, they go into the overshift. And almost any other left-handed hitter, same thing. Now, it was 1969, probably 1970, I went to Candlestick to see a doubleheader. And in game two of that doubleheader, with two down, nobody on, Willie Mays got on board. And I don't know if it was a single or a walk or whatever happened. And that brought up McCovey. And they went into that big overshift, three infielders to the right side, and nobody at third base. And Candlestick was just being refitted for the 49ers at that time. They had taken out the beautiful grass and put in the artificial turf because it was going to become a multi-purpose stadium. So Mays got his lead from first. The pitch came into McCovey, and he bunted on the turf, third base side. And it was a pretty hard bunt. And it went right down the line, past third base, and into left field. And Willie Mays scored on this bunt from first base. And McCovey churned into second with a stand-up double. Now, years later, I come to San Francisco to broadcast for the Giants, and I asked Mays and McCovey about this, and I said to Mays, so did you know that he was going to bunt? Did he give you some kind of a signal? He says, no, I didn't know. And then he went on, he told me all these stories about McCovey was so good at that time that Willie would himself hit what looked like a sure double, and he'd round first, and he said, oh, no. And he'd stop and go back to first because he knew if he took a double that they'd walk McCovey. The Giants couldn't afford that. They needed McCovey to get his swings. That's how good McCovey was. He won the MVP award in 1969, had one of the great seasons of that era. He had the all-time record for intentional walks set that year that lasted until Barry Bonds came along. But he did not know McCovey was going to bunt, but he was ready just in case. And McCovey just thought, well, they're giving me the hit. And Willie's a fast runner. It's artificial turf. So he bunted, and Mays scored. So I cannot help but think of that every time I see Belt come up, and there's nobody at third base. I think, Brandon, they're giving you the bunt. And he did bunt. I think it was Game 5 in the 2014 World Series, and it was a big spot. It's the first time he ever did it. Pence had just gotten a base hit. There was no score in the game, nothing. And he bunted. And even then, the shortstop, Escobar, who's a great defensive player, he raced in, he barehanded it, made a play on him, and almost got him anyway. But he beat it out for a hit, and the Giants ended up getting a couple of runs in that inning. Huge. It was more than they needed. Bumgarner pitched the shutout, and the Giants went ahead 3-2. And that bunt was a key to the whole operation. It wasn't like they were saying, no, you know he might bunt. No, he'd never done it before. So maybe that's it. Now all these years since, they're expecting it. So he's waiting to do it again. Anyway, that was my memory from back in either 69 or 70. And the great McCovey and Mays teamed up on a bunt, and Mays scored from first on a bunt.
I love it. Yeah. I will tell a 30-second follow-up to that, and then we'll bring out Bobby. The team that I grew up rooting for, the Montreal Expos, this was a little before my time. I was born in 74. Thank you, one Expos fan. And they played in a park called Jarry Park. Jarry Park was a very large municipal park. Within it was a little lousy park. It was kind of a semi-pro park. There were 3,000 people there. Within 8 months, they turned it into a stadium that seated 29,000. But it was in a municipal park. So, in Arizona, they have that swimming pool. It's all nice, and you have your cocktail and stuff. But they had a municipal pool beyond the right field fence in Montreal, like an actual with kids and stuff and parents. And it was about 440, 450 out there. And there were two guys that people were terrified when they came to the plate. One was Willie Stargell, and one was Willie McCovey. And basically, when either of them came to the plate, literally every child left the pool because there was a chance that it was going to be hit on the fly. And it was interesting because Stargell ended up hitting the pool a little bit a few more times than McCovey did. And it got to the point where Stargell terrorized the pool so much that in French they started calling it La Piscine de Willie, which literally means Willie's swimming pool. And it's apropos because Willie McCovey was the other guy. So two Willies were the guys who terrorized small children in Montreal. So there you go. All right, let's bring on our additional guest, and we'll have a little...
It's a great venue. This is awesome.
It is. Apparently, this is some great acts and stuff, rock acts and stuff who come here. It's cool. Good job. So since we started on this road anyway, let's get into this right away. Why don't players try to bunt more often against the shift? I mean, if you're Barry Bonds, okay, but for mortals, why not just try to do that?
I think the competitor in these guys, the home run hitter doesn't want to go up and bunt. So they feel like in some ways the pitcher wins because now I'm bunting. So, in many ways the shift has worked. You know, they've stopped me from doing what I do, which is why back in the day Ted Williams always tried to hit over the shift, right? I mean, so it's not new. You know, competitors, they like to do what they do and hit for power, and so they're going to try to hit for power.
One of the things we talked about on the panel previously was this idea of contact hitting as well, and so I wanted to follow up with you. Is this team geared to have a low strikeout approach, to put the ball in play, to hit the ball for extra base, for doubles, triples, things like that, because you play in this ballpark? Or if you played in a neutral park, or maybe even a hitter's park, would you be emphasizing that as much? Because it's clearly a goal of the Giants to try to build a team like that. It happens to be suited perfectly for the stadium. Are you zigging while other teams zag, everybody striking out, you're putting in play, or this is our park, we're going to play it like this?
Well, I think there's days where you can ask Bruce Bochy. He wishes we would strike out more and hit more homers. But yeah, I mean, we do try to play to our ballpark, and that's a contact-type team. Although we have contact-type guys, we also have guys who understand the strike zone, which is part of the reason they don't strike out as much, just as much as they are high contact. But you know, there's times where you wish, you know, the guys would go for it, and Boch is quick to remind them of that. But yeah, I mean, we're playing within our strengths of this ballpark.
But I think also, last couple of years especially, even though the Giants' numbers aren't big, they don't strike out a whole lot. They don't compare to the big power ball clubs. You take the Giants out of their ballpark, and just in their road games, the Giants are one of the top one or two offensive teams in the league. Now, I don't know how the numbers are this year, but in 2014, that was an excellent offensive team, 2015 as well. So I think it's a little bit surprising to find out how strong offensively they were when you just look at them in their road games and look at every other team in their road games. The Giants are right there at the top. So I think it's a team it's a pretty deep lineup, and so far this year with the injuries and whatnot, maybe you haven't been able to see the lineup that you envisioned out there as often as you would have liked.
No, we have struggled to see guys, especially, you know, Hunter, missing him a lot. But yeah, I mean, we've got great hitting coaches. I think that, you know, work alongside a great manager that try to make sure that our guys are prepared as best they can be day in and day out. I mean, I think sometimes what we ask of our hitting coaches is, you know, to always be looking for that adjustment to the swing that will help, you know, get a guy going. And, you know, our coaches have to stay positive. You want to keep the guys positive, and it's a challenging job, but they do a great job.
I am a statistically oriented writer who believes in chemistry, possibly making me a leper. I'm not really sure. Hunter Pence is an interesting cat, and the ability to go onto a field and literally lead people in a Daniel Bryan yes, yes, yes chant is phenomenal. He's a force of nature, that guy. I've had a chance to talk to him a little bit, one-on-one, in front of a crowd. He's something else, and he's definitely would be one of the leaders, if not the leader on the team. We can... You know, I could ask it in two different ways, kind of the same question. For you, Bobby, we could start there and just how much are you looking into makeup and leadership skills and things like that when you are trying to assemble a roster? And then I'll try to kind of spin it another way for you, John.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much, Jonah.
Yeah. Sorry. Didn't mean it like that.
I really appreciate it.
I deserve that.
Okay, so Bobby, you go now. I'll take the revised question after.
Owned by the legendary John Miller. It's a good night.
What was the question? No. Yeah, I mean, John, you should answer the question. I feel like that you...
Please do.
Well, truly, what was the question?
Hunter Pence seems like a cool leader, dude. That true?
Yeah, so when you went out, you and Brian Sabian, you got Hunter Pence. Was that the reason you got him? Is like he hits home runs and he's a leader. He's a cool leader in the clubhouse. Is that what you were looking for?
Wow,
No.
This was a terrible question by me.
No. I mean, we do spend a lot of time looking at the character of our guys. I mean, there's no way we know that Hunter Pence is going to have that kind of fire when he gets here. But I mean, we're looking at the quality of the athlete, the quality of what they can offer, you know, offensively or defensively or pitching wise to our club. But you also, when you're dealing with the league, I mean, you're trying to get as much information as you can, whether that's from, your scouts or from, teammates that have played with him before. You're trying to make sure that you ultimately are building a team within the clubhouse as well as the one on the field. So you want to make sure you have guys that are going to, pull together and get along. And we're fortunate that, we've gotten some really great leaders, and many different kinds of leaders, whether it's a quiet presence by example in a Buster Posey or, which you go through a draft process. You see the kid in high school and you see him ultimately in college. Our scouts make sure they look every kid in the eye and get to know them beyond just what they can do on the field. But ultimately, when you're doing major league trades, you're really, your reputation precedes you, and you hopefully you're getting guys that will gel together in the clubhouse.
I mean, to me, it brings up something that I think is important that doesn't happen as often as it should, because Hunter Pence could have left the Giants. He had a contract that was up. He was having an excellent year. I think that the Giants knew that it was very possible that he might leave. And Hunter Pence, though, he loved it here. He loved the whole scene. He loved the ballpark. He loved his teammates. And he loved being able to ride his little scooter from the ballpark to his apartment down along the Embarcadero. The whole idea of everything about this area, he loved it. And he wasn't going to stay here for nothing. But I think he did make a decision that if the Giants would meet a certain level, that he'd go ahead and sign. He wouldn't even go out and find out how many millions upon millions he might be leaving on the table. And I'm not asking you to give us all the inside info. Jonah can ask you that. But what I'm just making a statement that I not only respect what he did, but I'd like to see more players do that when you have the kind of money that is being made in the game right now. And I can't speak for anybody in terms of what their needs are, what their goals are, what other responsibilities they may have. But if everything is just right for you in that town right now, then why not take a little bit less money and ensure that you stay where you love it, where everything is just perfect? Because I've seen guys go to other towns, and they were hired guns in the other town. They were not a guy who just came up here and the fans just adored him, or whatever the situation was. They better be good when they go to the town, because they spent a fortune to get him, and that's why they're there. So anyway, and we've seen it so many times over the years. Manny Ramirez, he always talked about how unhappy he was in Boston because he came up in Cleveland, and Cleveland, they loved him in Cleveland. He was just Manny, and so on and so forth. But it was more money, and there any number. Albert Pujols, to me, the same thing. And Albert had his reasons, I'm sure, why he didn't want to stay in St. Louis. But in St. Louis, they watched him come up the very first day. He was a Cardinal. They watched him grow. They watched him become one of the great players. And in St. Louis, they knew he's going to get older and he's going to start going downhill. They already knew that. Stan Musial started going downhill at some point. And they would have accepted that. But I don't know, and maybe Anaheim's a good place to go if you're going to do that. Because it's kind of laid back. It's low key. It's
hot
Anaheim.
fire tonight.
But I always look at Albert in Anaheim and think, I don't understand how he could be there. Now maybe Albert has a lot of other things that he's, people he's supporting or whatever. I'm sure if I ever sat down with him and he would explain it all to me, it would work out. But I feel kind of sad that he's not in St. Louis, where it seems to me he belongs and where everybody would still be behind him.
We briefly mentioned the idea of Buster Posey and that he's kind of this quiet leader, and its personality doesn't necessarily jump off the page like it does with Pence. I'm an outsider. I mean, as fans, we have as much access to Posey as is given from the outside. What can either or both of you shed light on with Posey that maybe the general public doesn't necessarily know about, whether it's personality-wise or a certain way that he prepares? Because he's just excellent. I mean, he's kind of the Jeter of the Giants, I guess, in a way. He's just like Jeter's a good player. We know it's fine. We could say that. He's this guy. He's very consistent. He does the job every year. We don't really know much about him off the field. So what light can we shed in terms of either Posey, the person, or the player that might not be obvious?
Well, I mean, we all know he's married with two kids?
Yeah, the twins.
The
Yeah,
twins. And
team twins, nice.
yeah, so he's a family guy. I mean, he comes, he's as humble as he appears. I mean, he's a very quiet, presence in that clubhouse, but he definitely has expectations as to how it's supposed to be, and he makes those known in various ways that ultimately, I think guys respect that. When you come up to the big leagues for the first time, or you come in as a veteran player in a trade, you look at Buster Posey and you know that he's going to help set the tone of the clubhouse, and so that leadership is very clear in that room, even though it may not be visible to the outside world. But I think that this is a guy that plays with injuries that nobody writes about or knows about, because that's just who Buster Posey is. I mean, there's things that even when his numbers aren't right, there's usually something wrong, but he's not going to talk about that. And I think that that's kind of the character of the player.
One of the most cool things when the Giants won the whole thing in 2010, first time that they'd won the World Series as the San Francisco Giants, and they went to New York. Buster Posey got an award, and several different Giants got awards. Tim Lincecum got an award, and the Giants didn't just send those guys back for the big New York baseball writers' dinner where the commissioner hands out the official awards and that sort of thing. It's the big off-season event in Major League Baseball. Willie Mays came back to New York, where he started his career, and they went up to a school near the old Polo Grounds where the Giants had played, and where Willie first lived. He played stickball with the kids there. And the New York Times got wind of it. They did a big story about it, and Willie went and met with the kids at this school. The principal of the school assigned everybody in the school to write a paper about Willie Mays, find out who he was, and write everything you could find out about him, so that they all knew who Willie Mays was when he got back there. And so they did that, a big event, and that was really cool. They had the World Series trophy, and the kids all got their pictures taken with Willie. And the next day, they met with a group, the New York Giants Preservation Society, of people who were fans of the Giants when they were in New York, and they're still there, or their kids are still there, still involved. And they have meetings every month or two and whatnot. And it's kind of a cool thing. The Giants still have this presence in New York in a real way. So the Giants met with them at their meeting. And Willie Mays said to Larry Baer, who was also there, he says, I want to interview Buster Posey at this meeting. And come to find out that Willie saw so much of himself in Buster. Not just that Buster got there and they won, and that Buster was a special player, but Willie came up 1951 in late May. And the Giants were doing so-so. And then Willie ignited a fire under them, and they ended up winning the pennant that year and went to the World Series. And that's pretty much the same. Within a day or two of the actual date on the calendar that Mays had come up, that's when the Giants brought Buster Posey up. And then the Giants got it going. And so Willie saw so much of himself in Buster and the kind of a player he was and the kind of special talent that he had. And I thought that was one of the great statements to hear that from Willie Mays. And he had special questions that only Willie Mays could ask of somebody like that. So anyway, and then we've seen with Buster, because he was not a catcher until later in college. He didn't come up as a catcher. And he was still a work in progress as a catcher when you guys brought him up. He's gotten so good at it now that all those championships, Buster caught every one of those games all through every one of those postseasons, and all those pitchers got walked through those games with Buster Posey. So I think he knows a little bit about what he's doing back there as well. Not just the hitting part of the game and all the other things. Buster has, I think, taken pride in becoming one of the premier catchers all the way around, handling a staff, the throwing arm. This year, he's a weapon behind the plate. I think some teams don't even try to steal now because Buster has, and I mean that sincerely, that he's become such a weapon behind the plate.
You guys can't see it. Bobby, he's the general manager of a team, so he has to look at his phone occasionally. He just got an offer, an A-ball prospect for Noah Syndergaard. I think you should take that trade. It's a good trade. Noah Syndergaard's pretty good. I think he'll play in this ballpark.
I wish that was the offer. That'd have been good.
Can you? What did you get on that phone?
Yeah, tell us. Well, that'd be interesting.
Who is that?
There was a Yasiel Puig exclamation.
You never know.
We're going to end up no commenting. That was going to be my guess. So we're on the subject of starting pitchers, and it came up in the previous panel, but it's fascinating to me. Everybody in the industry, load up on relief pitchers. Let's get a three-headed monster. Let's do this and this. Giants say $250 million on 2 starting pitchers. We're going in this direction. Totally zigging when other teams zag. They're good pitchers, certainly. So that, it's not a matter of the credentials or the bona fides necessarily. But what specifically made you say, okay, we see all these relief pitchers out there. We're acknowledging that. We're going to go out and spend on starting instead, and we're going to go harder than any other team in the offseason.
Well, 2015 was such a hard year for us, with our starting pitching, and part of our success in 10, 12, and 14 has been the strength of our starting pitching. And yeah, our bullpen clearly played a significant role as well, as did our offense. But we feel like that the core of our team has been our starting pitching, and to give ourselves the best chance to get back into a postseason, we felt like we needed to really strengthen our rotation. We have options coming up in the system, but none that we're ready to start this year and make an impact. And so we felt like this was a chance to do something that would set us on a much better path. And we've seen the struggles of guys that are still with us, but we've also know that it's going to take a lot more than what we had in 2015 to get back. And so this was a way to jumpstart it and to give us a real shot in the arm. And we knew offensively we had pretty much the core of our club already in place. And so we felt like that was one area where we could make the most impact. And probably the deepest part of our system going into the season was our young bullpen, our arms, and options that would give us choices to work through. And so we felt like that was the best place to focus in this free agent market.
If you get something on the phone that you need to respond to, just go ahead.
No, I appreciate that.
All right. Now, if you're going to have somebody available that's not with you right now for the postseason that you might be able to acquire, it's going to have to happen soon, right?
Yeah, we have to do it by 9 o'clock on the 31st. So we're running short on time.
So 9 p.m. Pacific Wednesday. All right. All right. Okay.
This is the best, man. All right, you know what? We're going to ask about even year because it's even year. The Giants are obviously going to win the World Series. We already know it. Let's skip ahead to the part where they've already won the World Series. That seems like a nice thought. So I'm not even interested in the voodoo. I don't believe in voodoo. But I do think that there is something to the idea of regression and kind of taking a step back and taking a step forward. This is obviously just an extreme example where the Giants are really good. They're not terrible the following year, but not as good, and it keeps happening. Do you feel like you get a grace period after you win the World Series? We're going to holster it. I don't mean like, we can't win, but I mean we don't have to not necessarily spend as much money, take it easy, we're happy with this club, and conversely, like after last season, this isn't working, we need to go hard? Or has it just kind of worked out that way where the team has been much more aggressive after not winning than it has after winning?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the payroll never had a bigger jump than from 10 to 11. I mean, after winning in 10, we made a huge push. I mean, in 2002, when we didn't win, we had really a flat payroll, very little increase. In fact, it required to stay within payroll that we trade Russ Ortiz. So, we still had a very good year in 2003, then scuffled after that. Part of that because of what you gave up from the 2002 team, including Jeff Kent. So, for us, I think the push. Oh, sorry, is that a bad word, Jeff Kent?
I didn't even bring up the Aubrey Huff contract as being one of the big reasons that 2010 went to 2011 a lot of money. So,
yeah. Well, Uribe, was very much in our plans for 2013.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we ended up signing Huff, and he was upset because of what we gave him. He wanted at least that or more, and so he left and went to L.A. in a huff. So we learned our lesson, that. But at the same time, thanks to Huff, we ended up with Brandon Belt to come in and fill the void as Huff struggled. But BB,
he's not here.
We don't think so, at least. But I think there's, you look at 2011, probably our best year pitching-wise, but we lost, our key guy in Buster Posey, and we never really recovered. We never recovered from, that injury. We obviously lost a lot offensively behind the plate. I think that the push is to win every year. I think that it doesn't necessarily look that way as you struggle in those odd years, but some of that's injury related. I don't think that the payroll's never gone down in the odd years. So I think there's a fatigue factor. What these guys have to go through to get through October, there is a fatigue factor. There is a little later start to their off season because of their routine, where they might normally start their routine in November. Now they just finished a World Series, so they take a little extra time. So there could be some of that. I can't explain it. I mean, Kansas City went back to back. Texas went back to back. So obviously it can be done.
I think if you do look back at 2011, the pitching was so good that year, and the Giants lose Buster in May, and ultimately they did trade for Carlos Beltran, although then he got hurt right after the Giants got him and went on the disabled list, and even when he came back, he wasn't right for a while. The Giants scored so few runs that year that, and they stayed in contention until, the last week? They still had a shot until the last week of the season. I went back for 20, 25 years at teams that had scored that few runs, and all those teams lost 95 to 105 games. So the pitching was, to your point, the pitching was so good that year that they stayed in contention, even though scoring any runs at all was just a terrible problem most of that year. So, and that was the disappointment of that season. That when you have that kind of pitching, you know that window's only going to be open for a certain amount of time. So the incredible thing is that at that time, I don't think any of us saw the Giants winning or even being a contender or getting to October without Matt Cain and Tim Lincecum being key components of the whole deal. And yet in 2014, neither one was there, and the Giants still won it all. So that was pretty remarkable that they were able to make that transition and still win a World Series. I am H.O. I'm into the whole social media thing, yeah.
Nice. Follow John Miller on Instagram, by the way. One or two more, and we do want audience questions because we got John Miller and Bobby Evans. One of the keys to that transition is this homegrown infield, which is unbelievable. Unfortunately, Duffy is no longer with us. But the other guys
still have Gillespie, so Gillespie is part of the home.
That's true. But the homegrown infield has been remarkable, and the interesting thing about that, Panik was a first-round pick, but generally speaking, even Panik, who had a high pedigree, relatively speaking, these guys were not Ken Griffey Jr. level prospects coming out, and they have become dynamic, terrific. Well, Posey's great too, but Crawford, Belt, these guys were not perceived as impact kind of players, and they've become that way. And the Giants, especially over the last few years, have had this knack for just developing players into just dynamic major leaguers. You cannot give away the secret sauce of player development. I understand that. If you can give anything even approaching that as to how it is that these guys come up and are this good, when they're of relatively low pedigree, relatively low draft picks, it's been working, and it's been a huge key to the team's success.
Yeah, I look at each guy within that group. They all have their unique qualities. I mean, with Brandon Belt, he was drafted, I think, fifth or sixth round, and he really had a very Brandon Belt had a really rough stretch offensively in college. He had an approach that was very hard to translate to professional baseball, and he quickly made an adjustment that we'd like for him to make another adjustment now, actually, but he's. His adjustments were significant, and he rose through the system very quickly just because of that one adjustment. And And I think in the case of a Joe Panik, I mean, he's just an excellent athlete. I mean, he's a shortstop who, converted to second base, and has the great eye that he has. I mean, he's a contact hitter. We obviously see that he has power, but that's not really his game. But he can go to it when he needs to. So just a quality bat. And in the case of Crawford should have been a first-round draft pick, but he had a bad junior year. And had he not had that bad junior year, he would have been gone long before we ever saw him. But he fell, and we were able to get him in the fourth round. And quite frankly, he didn't want to sign out of the fourth round because it was significantly different dollars in the fourth round versus where he should have been picked. And at some level, we thought there was a risk it to even take him because his expectations were so much different that he would probably go back to school. But being that he was a Giants fan and a season ticket holder, and of course he has a famous candlestick sign that ultimately, I guess, that persuaded his signing, and of course the rest is history.
Get it?
I do. Let's do some questions. Kevin, you want to do that? Yeah. Give people a chance.
So outside of asking how much more you weigh with that ring on than off, I'm actually just curious, of all the visiting players you see, batter and pitcher, who most excites you to watch?
Who are we asking?
Of all the visiting players you see come to San Francisco.
Yeah. Oh.
Both of you.
Yeah. Which visiting players?
Well, I like, it's hard to, in the day, Stanton has been amazing to watch offensively. If you don't pay attention to the uniform, Kershaw has been very interesting to watch as well. But he's earned the respect of Bumgarner, so he's got my respect by virtue of that.
So I really remember last year when Aroldis Chapman came in with the Reds, and there was a lot of talk at that time that they were going to trade him and whatnot, and ultimately they waited till the offseason. But the Reds had a bad team, and they brought him in the ninth inning to try to finish. In fact, I'm trying to remember. They might have even brought him in with 2 outs in the eighth inning. Mm-hmm. I think that's true. And then he was going to get out of that, and then pitch the ninth inning and whatnot. And ultimately, the Giants rallied against him in the ninth. He got a blown save, and he came back for more after that. But he's very, very exciting to watch. I mean, it's not a question about who is he as a person, all that kind of stuff. Just very exciting to watch. But something occurred in that game where Madison Bumgarner was brought up as a pinch hitter to face him. And this became as if Bumgarner had just won the MVP as a hitter. Bumgarner with 59 home runs the year before. And Aroldis Chapman he was throwing 98, 99 mile an hour. All of a sudden, he's throwing 103, 104. He was so into it. And ultimately, I think he ended up walking him. I think he did. He ended up walking Bumgarner. And it was just one of the most... stuff like that only happens with Bumgarner. Other pitchers, it does not happen. There are other pitchers who can hit, but nobody gets walked as often as Bumgarner. Check it out. He got like eight or nine walks this year. So anyway, there are guys, the best players, if you're a baseball fan, you like to see the best players. That's why you come to the ballpark. And it's always been that way. When I was a kid, I loved the Giants, but I wanted to see Hank Aaron when he came to town. I wanted to see Roberto Clemente. I wanted to see all the great ones when they came to town. One of the great memories I have as a kid was the Giants trading for Warren Spahn, a Hall of Famer, the winningest left-hander in the history of the game. And I begged my dad to let's go to that game. It was a, Wednesday afternoon game at Candlestick. He was going to make his debut for the Giants. And he was, 43, 44 years old. He was an old man by that time. And they got him. He was 4-12 with the Mets when they made the trade. But he went out. He pitched a really good game, and he helped him down the stretch. So he had some style. And I just as a kid was so excited to see Warren Spahn in the Giants uniform. So this player, that player, there are some great ones. But I think all of us feel like this is the show. And when the best of the best come to town, that's when you want to be there. And you want to see the Giants take them on because those guys are so good. And that's the test, the best of the best. That's why the World Series is so fun. The best team from one league, the best team from the other league. So, and sometimes it ends up that Sergio Romo, who's throwing 86 miles an hour, is facing the best hitter on the planet, and he strikes him out without even getting a swing off. So,
I want to preempt the next question from the audience for a second to just ask you guys to share a Barry Bonds memory, because I'm not a Giants fan per se, but I other than any Expo that I ever grew up rooting for, Barry Bonds was my guy, and I just think he's the best. And I have a Barry Bonds model bat in my house, and your call of the home run in Yankee Stadium, hit it to New Jersey, I've watched that maybe 800 times, and I'm not a Giants fan. So you could literally tell any Barry Bonds story you want, any Barry Bonds memory that you want, but the fact that we had Ted Williams incarnate in this city for years it blows my mind, and it's just I feel like it might not have even been real. Was it real? Did it happen? I think it happened.
Well, my favorite home run was in 2002 World Series in Anaheim. But my favorite Barry Bonds memory, I've lost both my mom and dad, but my mom, big baseball fan, was with me on the road. I don't know which city it was in now, but she and my dad were there, and so she went to get morning coffee, and while she's in the mall grabbing a coffee, she comes back and tells me that she ran into Barry, and she said that she approached him, and not without any expectations, but just approached him and just said, I just want to know what time batting practice is today. And I'm just thinking, oh, Mom, I don't want to hear how this story ends, but she said that he took her hand and told her what time batting practice was, and just made her day. And I'm thinking, here's Barry Bonds, doesn't know who my mom is, probably doesn't even know who I am, and he's just so gentle to this nice elderly woman. And I just thought, you know what, Barry Bonds is okay in my book. So,
all right. I remember, because Barry did things that were so spectacular, and he did them so often, that he changed games just because he happened to be there, not because he hit a home run or what he actually did at the plate. And a couple of stories, and one of them was he had the flu. He was sick. He was throwing up, and he was sleeping back in the clubhouse. And they were trying to keep him hydrated and whatnot. And Felipe Alou was the manager at the time, and the Giants went extra innings. They're playing Colorado, and Clint Hurdle was the manager. Whenever Barry came up, Hurdle made a big show, just walking down the dugout, going like this, give him four wide ones, and so Felipe says, "Get Barry. I need him here in the dugout." So Barry comes into the dugout, and Felipe said, "I want you when we come up, I'm going to put you up as a pinch hitter to lead off the inning." And Barry says, "Well, I'm sick as a dog. I can't even see straight." He says, No, they're going to walk you intentionally. He says, "Well, all right, probably you should put some spikes on just so it." So he gets some spikes on, and he finally turns to Felipe before he says, "But if he throws one inside on me, it'll kill me because I just can't see it." He said, "I guarantee you, he won't come within 8 feet of your body." And so we're, all right, I hope you're right. And he goes up, and Clint Hurdle walks down the dugout going like this. And they walk Barry, and I think Felipe put in a pinch runner, somebody who was not sick as a dog. And I don't know, there was a steal, there was a bunt, whatever. And somebody got a hit, game over. And Barry, he was already back asleep in the clubhouse by the time and he turned that game around, and he couldn't even see straight. The other one was, and this happened over and over again, but I remember it in particular in Cincinnati, and maybe you remember this one too, Bob, that there was a pitcher, a right-hander with the Reds, and for some reason, Barry just didn't see the ball well out of this guy's hands, and Barry was like 2 for 16 lifetime against him, and he's 0 for 3 this particular night, and the Giants are down, I don't know if it's 2-1 or 1-0 in about the 8th inning. And the Reds had a new manager. They'd fired their manager in the middle of the year. They had a guy managing the ball club, a former catcher. And he orders this guy to walk Barry Bonds with the bases empty. And Barry's 0 for 3 in that game with a couple of ground balls and a pop-up and 2 for 16 lifetime. And the pitcher's mad. And finally, they send the pitching coach out to talk to him. The catcher goes out, and he's like, well, why would I walk the guy? I own him. I get him out all, you need to walk him. That's it. So he walks him, and he's ticked off. Now, the next guy hits a 2-run homer. I don't know, Pedro Feliz or whoever was hitting behind Barry. And the Giants win that game. And the pitcher's throwing his glove down. And so Barry had that kind of an effect on the game. Managers, even sometimes an inning before he was going to come up, were already managing based on just that. Their whole strategy revolved around when Barry Bonds was going to come up. So Barry he did extraordinary things, and when he hit all those home runs, the 73 home runs, for me the most memorable was the night he hit number 70 in Houston. You remember that 3-game series at Houston? It was the last week of the season. And Barry never saw a strike. And they walked him intentionally over and over and over again. So they walked him like 10 or 12 times. And Willie Mays was at the game because, if Barry broke McGuire's record, Willie, that's his godfather. He wanted to be there. And Barry was so frustrated because he never saw a pitch. And sometimes, I think Larry Durker was the manager, it was almost out of spite that he just did not want to see Barry do anything in his ballpark, and we're just going to walk him. We don't care what the situation is. And Willie went into the Giants clubhouse during the 7th or 8th inning of this game, and he said, listen, you guys are winning this series. You've won the first 2 games, and you're ahead tonight. They keep walking you, and you keep scoring, and they keep getting runs. So just take your walk for the good of the team, and don't let it frustrate you. But be ready, because you guys are so far ahead now, some kid may come into the game. So in the 9th inning, some kid came into the game, a left-hander. This guy was throwing 99 miles an hour, and it was obvious even from watching him warm up, he had no idea where the ball was going. And literally, Barry came up, and the first pitch went to the backstop and whatnot, and Barry's like, phew. So now he stands back in there, but he took his godfather's words to heart, and the guy threw him a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, boom, and off into the second deck in right center field, the longest home run in the history of that ballpark up to that time, and that was number 70 to tie the record, and that was Barry Bonds at that time. He did things that I don't think any of us, we never saw Ruth. I never saw Ruth, and I don't know if any of us will ever see that kind of stuff again. So great memories at that time, and it's just too bad. It's almost like a classical tragedy, a Shakespearean tragedy, that everything that Barry did is colored now, always by that discussion of how he did it and so on and so forth. But watching him do it was the most extraordinary thing that I think any of us who were there to see it have ever seen and probably ever will.
Yeah, those games happened. They were not colored at all for me anyway. I have to hijack one more question. We'll go back to the audience because you brought up Felipe Alou. That's it. You bring up Felipe Alou. That's what happens. What makes Felipe? I know what makes Felipe Alou so special, but I don't think he gets talked about that much within mainstream Giantsdom. Maybe you could share a little Felipe Alou nugget of wisdom or what have you, because he's such an extraordinary man and such a big part of Giants lore, of course, as both a player and a manager.
Well, we just named our new Dominican complex after Felipe and the Alou brothers, and it's a real tribute to the whole family. Felipe continues to be an important part of the organization. I mean, just his presence, in major league meetings or in player development meetings, his visits, to the ballpark or us on the road, or his time, scouting with us, even, in Florida, a couple months ago, and then, during the winter in the Dominican. He just plays has such a great presence, and he's also a great representative of the organization in the Dominican Republic. We're fortunate that we had him for the years we did as a manager, but Felipe, he's just a baseball phenom, and just his understanding of the game and his approach to the game, and the way he mentors our own minor league coaches. Even the unique relationship that he and Boch have, and the rapport they have, in talking the game. I guess for me, as I work with him even now, and I try to talk with him at least once a week, I feel like that, he never sees the game, necessarily the way everybody else sees it, and he's very candid about looking at different parts of the game that can be, can turn the tables on what's happening at any given moment. And my favorite Felipe memory is I'm watching the Game 7 of the World Series in Kansas City, and this is a high pressure game. I mean, we're fighting it out. I think Moore gets the base hit, and we take that 3-2 lead. And before the game ever started, I'm sitting in Boch's office, and he calls Affelt to the door, and he says, "Hey, if anything goes, off wire with Huddy, whatever happens, you're coming in the game." And Affelt's like, "Okay." And then he turns and says, and I told Bumgardner that when he gets up, if he has to get up at any point during the game, if he gets up, you're not getting up just to warm up. You're coming in the game. So just be ready. So sure enough, Huddy struggles. Affelt comes in the game, and then before long we see Bumgardner out in the bullpen warming up. And we're all nervous, but sure enough, inning turns over, and here comes Bum, into the game. And as he's running in, I hear this voice behind me. "This game is over." And I'm thinking, now what? You can't say that. I'm not. But I just proceed to watch. Base hit. I feel like there was another hit, and then Bum pitches out of it, and I get up to just stretch my legs, and I see Felipe there, and I can't even walk past him, and he says it again. "This game is over." I'm like, "Felipe, how can you say that?" I'm thinking, and he was right. This game was over a few innings later. So Felipe knows his baseball.
So he gave up a hit when Bumgarner in his first inning, and I think it was Aoki, the year before Aoki became a Giant, and Aoki hit a shot down the left field line, and this is the kind of line drive that is going to be an extra base hit, and if it had been an extra base hit, probably that runner who had gotten the single is going to score, and just like that, 2 batters in, this game's going to be tied up in the 5th inning, and no, not Blanco. Juan Perez. Very good. Juan Perez. I love that guy. He sprints over and he makes the catch. And after the game, I asked Juan Perez about the play because it looked like such a sure thing double. And he said the Giants had gone into Kansas City, played interleague ball back in early August, 2.5 months earlier. And Aoki, facing Bumgarner, I guess in the 3rd game of that series, hit a line drive down the left field line that went foul by 6 or 7 feet. And that Perez was thinking to himself at that time, wow, if that had been fair, that probably is a triple. And so now it's 2.5 months later, and there's Bumgarner on the mound, and here's Aoki, and that's the first time they hit his head. And he thought, I got to get closer to the line. He also looked into the dugout, and Roberto Kelly, who coaches the outfielders, he is pushing him. Kelly also remembered that play. And so that was a key that can easily be overlooked in terms of setting the defense and little things that guys remember and whatnot. Because for me, I think not only was that a key, but the next spring now, Aoki is with the Giants. He reports to spring training to Scottsdale Stadium, and he walks into the clubhouse, and this guy says hello, and that guy says hello, and he keeps saying, where's Perez? And they say, oh, over there in the corner. And he goes past all these guys, kind of pushes them out of the way. Buster later, Not now, Hunter, yeah. And he walks over to Perez, who's just kind of sitting there like, and he says, how did you do that? Best catch ever. I'm so glad you're on my team now. And he shook his hand, and that was it. So he'd been thinking about that one swing of the bat himself, that whole off season. But the thing for me that I remember in that postseason was after Game 5 in San Francisco, and everything's over with. All the writers and the media have all gone back upstairs to write their stories. And Bruce Bochy's sitting in his office all by himself. And so I walk in just to chit-chat with him a little bit. And first off, wanting to know about Bumgarner. And he said, yeah, I think Bumgarner could come back. He told me he thinks he could give us a couple innings in Game 7 if we need him. And, you know, maybe 3. We'll see. Of course, he ended up giving him 5. No problem. But it came down to that Bumgarner, our discussion came down, Bumgarner pitching that game because everybody wanted him to pitch Bumgarner on 3 days rest in Game 4. The Giants were trailing 2-1. And Boch said, wow, I didn't get death threats, but the next thing to him from people were like, what is wrong? You total moron. What are you doing? And he said, I said, well, what were you doing? And since you brought it up. And he said that he felt like if he'd pitched Bumgarner 3 days rest, he definitely could have won that game against Kansas City's number 4 pitcher. But in Game 5, against Kansas City's number 1 pitcher, at that time James Shields, he felt like he needed his number 1, not his number 4 against their number 1. So his whole point was, we need not to just win Game 4, but we need to win Game 5. We need to be ahead 3-2. So he was not in desperate mode for Game 4. His idea was we can win Game 4 with Ryan Vogelsong, and then we have Bumgarner, and then we have our best shot to go ahead 3-2. So he had the long view there, and he just kind of, you know, gritted his teeth about all of the abuse that he was taking from people all around the city and all around the country for being so just such an idiot for not pitching Bumgarner on 3 days rest. But I think they missed the whole point, and for Boch, that's not a point that he's going to make in public. In other words, this is something he's going to hold close to the vest. But I felt like I learned something about him right there, what he was really all about. And the next year they include the broadcasters, and I'm not exactly sure why they do, but when they give out the World Series rings, the Giants give the broadcasters one. Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate it. So I would wear that ring for the first 2, 3, 4 weeks of the season because people in the neighborhood, the grocery store, you go to a restaurant, everybody wants to see it. So great, you wear it and everybody can see it. And then I take it off because I feel like I didn't win a single game. I feel sort of like I'm not really worthy. So the first day I don't wear it, Boch says, where's your World Series ring? So I explained to him, you know, I'm didn't win a single game, so I don't wear it. And he says, I didn't win a single game. And I laugh. Oh, yeah. Well, no, I didn't win a single game. Well, you made the moves. You made the right. It says, I made the move I thought was the right move, but if Jeremy Affeldt doesn't get those guys out, then what did I do? It's only the right move because they executed. They actually got it done. They were good enough to get it done. And I don't ever want to forget that. And I've never actually, other than that moment, ever heard any manager actually talk about it in that way. I think most managers will want to say that, you know, they have their contribution, they do this, they do that, and it can help add to the win total. But Boch just said, no, it's all about the guys in that room. They win every game, and not me. And I just hope that the moves work out. The confidence that I place in them is justified. But and I think that says a lot about who he is. And I think the players respond to that because he commands respect, but at the same time, there's a humility, and there's nothing put on about it. That the glory, the congratulations all go to those guys who did it on the field. So, and to me, that's a secret part of his success, and just between us, all right, in this room, yeah, all right.
One more thing we will go to an audience question now, but one more thing I have to follow up with on Felipe Alou. Because of course I do. the single funniest baseball clip I've ever watched in my life is the Ruben Rivera clip, of course, and it's you narrate it masterfully, and of course it ends poorly for the Giants. I understand that, but it's great, and there's layers and layers, and David Lucci botching it, and it's fantastic. But the coda, the bow tie, the icing on the cake is Felipe Alou's reaction to Ruben Rivera, the way that he shakes his head in agony and disgust and bewilderment at how this play occurred is like, I could see Felipe's face right now thinking about it. It's fantastic. It's so good. Anyway, okay, we'll go to another question.
All
So
right,
good job on the
Mike.
worst base running of all time.
Actually, two quickies here. Number one is, what are they going to do about speeding up the instant replay and the managers being able to go to the dugout and spend 3, 4, 5 minutes before they then send it to New York? It's crazy. It's taken way too long. So that's question number one. Question number two is, how does a team like the Mets make a mistake as big as trading Daniel Murphy? What was that about?
So, so as far as Dan Murphy was a free agent, but they didn't try to keep him. I think again, I felt like that they were open to moving Dan Murphy, in possible trades prior to that, I think, but I don't know. It may have been, the defense. It may have been just, their projections on, his contract and what his value would be. As far as the instant replay, the high def replay, what do they call it? XMO. It's really going to take an investment by Major League Baseball, probably of a significant amount of money. But if XMO becomes available in clubhouses, where you get a high-def instant replay immediately, as opposed to right now, sometimes several minutes later. And that's sometimes what the video operators, the replay operators are waiting on in the clubhouses. They're waiting for the high-def video to be able to tell if this is a play that they should challenge. And it takes time for that to load into the system. And it makes the manager wait for that phone call, and it makes the video guys are waiting on the video. And so it slows down a lot of things that if an investment was made and if the technology was made available for all Major League clubhouses to get XMO, which is an instantaneous high-def replay, these things would take, much less than half the time, much less. I mean, it would be so much faster. I think that's really the answer that baseball's probably going to have to look for.
In the 2014 World Series, Game 7, the great play, I thought, of that whole World Series was Joe Panik making the headlong dive. This was Affeldt had come into the game. There's a runner on. And if he doesn't get to that ball, it's into the gap, maybe an extra base hit, maybe a run. But he makes the dive, and while he's sprawled out on the ground there in Kansas City, he sweeps the ball right from the glove to Crawford, who makes a lightning-quick relay to first. And they call the runner safe. It was Eric Hosmer, I think, who made the head-first dive into the bag. The Giants asked for the replay. This was the first time in World Series play that the replay was used. And it took a while, and it finally came back that he was out, and it was a double play. Now, the StatCast that the MLB.com uses, which is kind of cool, it broke that play down and showed that Panik actually broke to his right 1/100th of a second before the ball was hit. He actually was anticipating. His body was on the move before the ball got hit, and how quick Crawford did his whole thing. And the play at first, the guy was out. Hosmer was out by 1/1000th of a second. His hand was this far above the bag when the ball hit the glove. That's how close it was, and that Hosmer was running 18.5 miles an hour, but when he went into the head-first slide, now he was at 15 miles an hour. So literally, we had proof for the first time that I'd ever seen that you slow down if you make a head-first dive into the bag. Don't do it. Run through the bag. That's the way they teach it. So the next spring, Barrett, what's his first name? Barrett, the umpire. He's been around a long time. Ted Barrett. And there's two Barrett umpires. Ted Barrett, the veteran guy, now a crew chief, he says to Jeremy Affeldt, there was a night game at Scottsdale Stadium, he says, oh, by the way, I was in the umpire room there in New York that night, and you know how we looked at because they had 18 cameras, Fox or whatever, showing that play at first base. And we couldn't find at any angle to overturn that call, except they had a camera, a tiny little camera in the ground right next to the bag. And when we saw that, then we saw that the hand was this far off the bag at the moment that the ball hit the glove. And that was the call. The only reason we were able to, if they hadn't had that camera in the ground, the only reason we were able to get it right. So to me, that was pretty phenomenal. And I remember complaining on the air on our radio broadcast that night, man, this is, Game 7 of the World Series, and this is taking 6-7 minutes. It's kind of a... And then the call came down that he was out, and it was a double play. It's like, of course, that's exactly what needs to happen. Get it right. That's what we always say. But I agree with you, and I feel like there is a better way, and I think sometimes Sean Dunston and Chad Chop, they're waiting for that Exmo replay to come down because they don't have that capability themselves. It has to be fed down from whichever one of the telecasts that's using that technology that night has. So I always thought that, what if they just hired a fifth umpire who's in rotation? He's the guy in the video room. He can talk to the crew chief through an earphone or whatever, say, hey, give me a few seconds, I'm going to take a look at that. And then tell him, yeah, it was you got it right, or no, you got it wrong, you need to change it. And then put that guy in rotation with the other four umpires. And just one night, one of those guys is going to be in the video room. And but that's more umpires you need to hire, more pensions, and I don't know. See, that's where I don't care how much it costs. I don't know how much extra money it is, but that would be something I thought would work. So,
Kevin informs me that we have to get out of here, so I'll ask one more simple question. Skip ahead to 2018. The Giants have won their 5th World Series. Do you wear that on the right hand, or do you wear it on your thumb? What's the move there strategically in terms of the wearing of the rings?
When we first won in 2010, I saw Mays in the clubhouse, and I wasn't wearing my ring that day, and he said, Bobby, you always should wear your ring. And I'm like, Willie, why? He said, well, the more you wear it, the more valuable it becomes. I said, Willie, that's true if you wear it, sometimes people ask me if I'm wearing our last ring, and I said, well, I hope not. I'm wearing the latest. I hope it's not the last. It's I always like to wear the latest one, and taken from a great NFL player. My favorite ring is always the next one. So,
all right. $7:15 tomorrow night. First pitch. Johnny Cueto on the mound, Arizona.
Thank you so much to John Miller and to Bobby Evans. Big round of applause. And thank you all for coming out. What a cool crowd. Oh, and there's books and merch and stuff, so go do that stuff too. Thank you.